Welcome to the EarthWorks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons, and this is a very special EarthWorks podcast because today we're going to be celebrating the recent Women's U.S. Open that was held at the Olympic Club in San Francisco. And it was historic in a lot of ways, and perhaps the most important thing was that Troy Flanagan, the director of golf maintenance, pulled together an incredible feat. The majority of the people that came to volunteer were women from all over the country, assistants, superintendents, women in the industry, but it was his vision and his goal to bring together a large crew of women assistant superintendents to be part of their crew and work together with them. And interviewing Troy and Lorabeth West from Hillcrest in LA and Jessica Lenahan from Hayden Lakes up in Coeur d'Alene, you'll hear their stories. And one of the things that Troy says over and over again as we interviewed him was that the energy that these women brought to the table was exceptional. And the experience was really heart-wrenching in that these folks came together as such a team. They had such enthusiasm and such excitement and such energy. And they really made this a very, very special event. As you'll hear when we talk to Troy, not only were these women working on the crew, but Troy and his team pulled together all sorts of special events, seminars, and things that allowed everybody to kind of get together. He also brought the crew all together. They intermingled the entire volunteer and the Olympic Club staff as well. And it was just an amazing experience. The press that the Women's Open has gotten since it was held has really been quite exceptional. And I hope that this is a tradition for the Women's Open as we move forward. I need to thank a few people that have helped me with this podcast. First and foremost was Cherie Scarborough, who is a dear friend of ours from a very long time ago, and was on the volunteer crew, and she called me and encouraged me to pull this whole thing together and interview some of the women that were on that crew, and I thank her for that encouragement. And of course, Troy Flanagan and his entire staff for pulling off something that I think was just historic and exceptional. EarthWorks was a sponsor at this event, and we agreed to do that before we even knew what his vision was. And if I had known that, as I say to Troy, I might have actually donated more money. Probably not, but it was really an exceptional event, and we're going to be interviewing Troy and talking to him about his experience at that. So without any further ado, let's talk to Troy Flanagan, the Director of Golf Maintenance at the Olympic Club in San Francisco. Thank you so much. Troy, thank you so much for joining us. It is a real pleasure to have you here on the EarthWorks podcast. And I want to say, first and foremost, congratulations on an incredibly successful Women's Open. And I commend you. I truly, earnestly believe this was historic. The fact that you brought so many women in to help you out on that crew. And I assume that this was mostly your vision. So tell me about how this all came about, the whole idea.
Yeah, thanks, Joel, for having me. I really appreciate it. So about 4 or 5 years ago, when we were awarded the Women's Open, soon after, I don't know, I thought, it'd be pretty cool to have women, as many women as possible be on the volunteer crew. And so that was just one of those thoughts, and obviously it was a long ways away. So I didn't put a whole lot of time into it, but it was just one of those things that got in my head. And I don't know how. I don't know if it just came there, if I, read an article about, some women in turf, something like that. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. We're gonna run with that. And so a few years later, I saw or I read about the Bear Women in Golf, and right. I think it was maybe about 2 years ago, something like that. With COVID, maybe it was 3. How time flew during that time. So. And talked about the education portion. I was like, why don't we marry the two together? Why don't we have as many women volunteers as we can? And there's so much downtime during the volunteer effort.
Right.
You get done at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, really 8. And you don't start up again until 6 p.m. So how about let's make it some kind of networking, education, very vague, but something like that throughout the day. And so I reached out to Kimberly Gard with Syngenta, since Bayer was doing their thing, and I buy quite a bit of product from both of those companies. But I thought, okay, I'm gonna talk to Syngenta. So when I was in Las Vegas, I worked really closely with Kimberly Gard, Southwest rep for Syngenta. So I talked to her about it. She thought it was great. Kimberly's very outgoing. Get along with her really well. So that was great. So we talked about it with some people with Syngenta at the show in 2019. So right before COVID in Orlando.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay. So it was that long ago.
Yeah, that long ago. So we started the discussion about, just very vague, very general, how we're going to do this. And they were on board. And then, of course, a month later, COVID hits and everything got
Everything
shelved.
went to hell.
Yeah. So I guess that would have been 2020. So anyways, that happened. We really didn't speak about for a little while. And then we got later in the year, and the Women's Open in 2020 got pushed to December. So I think it was probably around October or so, I brought it back up to Kimberly, and you know how it was back then, and you run your company. Things were still uncertain, but golf was booming,
scary.
so we kind of felt good about it. So we just held off a little longer. Well, in the meantime, I was talking to Stuart Hackwell with Rainbird, and just having a good conversation with him. And I told him about the idea, and he was really excited. He really wanted to be a part of it. And Stuart is already pledging quite a bit of money to help with the volunteer effort here. So anyways, long story short, Syngenta loved the idea of having Rainbird come in with them. Rainbird ended up paying for all the flights for the 29 women coming out. And Syngenta also put money into the pot. Plus, they did all the Kimberly, and then I'll think of his name in a second. I'm blanking.
That's all right.
Stage fright, but and I will think of that. But anyways, they both took the bull by the horns and did all the education from start to end. Throughout the day, they volunteered throughout the whole week, all 7 days. First time they'd ever volunteered like this, and just had a blast with it.
Do training to do seminar work kind of things.
Yeah, correct. So each day, Monday through Friday, they did different things. One of the days with architect Carrie from Minnesota. Second day, we had a roundtable with 4 really prominent women from the Olympic Club. Came down and talked to them. My green chair, Marissa Marr, who first female green chair, Olympic Club, Stanford grad, and not even in her 30s yet. Amazing woman.
Not a slacker.
Oh yeah, exactly. And we had 3 other very prominent women in the club, and then we had Shannon Roulard from the USGA, and Shannon, championship director, was one that how the course played, whole locations, tees, all that. That was her whole deal, and she came down and talked to the women. So that was a great day. We had a gentleman from Syngenta come down and talk about inclusion.
I heard GCS. A lot about that. That went over extremely well.
Yeah, Brandon did a great job. And then from GCSA, Sheila, I think, sorry, I have some, I think it's Sheila, if I'm saying the name right. She came out and also talked about really all the different initiatives GCSA has, numbers, within how many women are in the turf industry, and had a really good talk. I unfortunately wasn't able to go to many of these.
Of course talks. Not. You were working.
A few other things. and then Gina Rizzi with Radius,
Right. Who's been on our podcast.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing week.
Let me ask, is it normal for a tournament to pay a volunteer's way head to toe like you did for these women? So normally a volunteer, the club would basically, wherever they would come from, they would take the down, but it's not uncommon that a tournament would put people up, but to get them there and all that stuff. So you guys really went out of your way. How did you find 29 women that would volunteer? I mean, that's I think that's fantastic. But was that a challenge? Was it an easy thing to do?
Well, for me, it was extremely easy because Kimberly Gard did everything.
Oh, so, wow! How easy is that? That's the easiest.
I know. So, and I'm getting back to his name, Joe Balmer. Like I said,
right? Yes.
Like I'm talking to Joel Simmons, and I'm thinking, okay,
Joel, they're all the same.
Yeah, that's what was throwing me off. So, anyways,
exactly.
Really
sorry about
job.
that.
Yeah. So Kimberly and I were talking about how to do this, and we were thinking, okay, well, we can put like an application out on Twitter, something like that, and it sounded like a great idea, but then all of a sudden it hit us, and it probably hit Kimberly first. Well, what happens if we get 60 or 70 women that want to do this? Originally, our number was
good.
Originally our number was 20 to 25, and because again, Rainbird was paying for everybody to come out, and they had already given us quite a bit of money for uniforms and food and all that.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to stretch it too far and overcommit. So that kind of worried us because we didn't all of a sudden want to get into a who do we pick kind of contest.
Yeah.
We had enough things going on, and that was the last thing. We didn't want to be negative by any way.
Sure.
So Kimberly's like, Troy, I'm going to just start calling. I know a few women. I'm going to call them, and then I'm going to ask them for other names and so on and so forth. Yeah. And Joel, this woman got on the tear. She was phenomenal.
That's great.
I think within a week. Oh yeah, I think within a week she already had probably about 3/4 of the women. And
wow.
And at that time that she was doing it, we still didn't exactly know how the flights were going to work, how much Rainbird was going to put in, although we had a general idea. And myself, Kimberly, and Stuart talked quite a bit, so it wasn't like he was out in the dark. But we were still kind of, and with COVID, and then you even look at what's the liability, of somebody paying for somebody's flight during COVID if they get sick.
Oh boy! Oh man!
Oh, so you can imagine.
Right. I wouldn't have even thought of that, but yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So
taking a risk.
So it was going really well, and all of a sudden, before you knew it, we had about 25 women, and then a couple other ones came in late, and we didn't want to. I don't want to say came in, but they heard about it and they contacted Kimberly and really wanted in, and they were great. They were great candidates, and a few vendors that were great candidates that people were pulling for. And so before you knew it, it was 29, and that was all Kimberly. So for Kimberly to get all the women, and then, but what we found out, Joel, was quite a bit of them really needed that help to get out here. You have one of two things with a volunteer. You have both the cost to get out here, and are they getting, are they losing a week of pay? Are they able to use vacation? Some courses like mine, when I've done this, they pay for it as education. So it's not like I'm taking vacation time. Well, I'm pretty lucky.
Right.
That's not always
not all
the case.
Courses are like that. I
hear you. Exactly. So we had a lot of assistance. We had people at different levels of their career, so the financial burden was quite a bit. Yes, once they get here, they don't have to spend a dime if they don't want to on food and the hotel and everything, travel, but within being here. But to get here is kind of a big push. So it was pretty cool what Rainbird did. Stepped in and
that's a class act as well. Who set up the education programs? Was that Kimberly as well?
That was Kimberly. Yeah. Yeah, the only one I did was the women from the Olympic Club.
From the Olympic Club, right? Yeah, I mean, again, I've interviewed a handful of folks that joined you, and it was interesting conversations because as much as we don't want to make this a big issue about women in golf, because it should be about everybody in golf, make it completely inclusive. And some of the women that I interviewed were actually rather concerned about that because they didn't want this to be a big women thing. But it turned out to be such a camaraderie experience for the people that I talked to, for the women that I interviewed and the women I've talked to in prepping for this podcast, and to a T. Everybody, first of all, they all, threw accolades to you and to the vision that you had. And again, I'll say this, I think this is historic, and I think it's just such a great thing. First of all, these folks work their tails off and they're incredibly good. I remember Kevin Hicks telling me, we interviewed Jessica Lenahan, and he goes, yeah, she was great because I'd put her on the staff and she'd run circles around the guys. So all the guys would pull their, they would get their act together just to keep up with her. And it was the best thing I ever did, he said. And I've never forgotten that. And obviously she's done extremely well, but it was interesting. I think there was a little hesitation in that regard, but once they got to the Olympic Club and they saw what you guys were doing, I mean, to a T, they all spoke about some of those events that you guys put on, and the one on inclusion kept coming up, and how powerful that was, and the imagery of women in golf, and it shouldn't be that way. And in fact, we've got this is an untapped labor resource, and they're incredibly good. I mean, we should encourage this and really make it happen. So again, accolades to what you guys did. And how did it go? I mean, how did it work for you from you've done this kind of work before. I mean, you had 29 women on staff and then another 30 volunteers and your whole crew. How did they all fit in?
It was amazing, Joel. I had no idea how powerful the week was. And
I bet.
And me well enough. I'm not one of these guys that gets up on the soapbox. And again, it was like, hey, this is a great idea. It'll be a lot of fun. I didn't put a whole lot of other thought into it. I had enough things on my mind, and the energy that they brought was amazing, and the excitement that they brought to the rest of the team. What happens to these things is you work so many hours, you're around all the time. You kind of get about Wednesday and Thursday, you kind of get a little
burned out,
a little tired and a little burned out.
Yeah.
The energy that they had, it went across all the other volunteers, which were mainly local. There's about five guys from out of state. But my crew, so 48 of us, there's 8 of us turf managers here. The rest of the guys are mainly Hispanic, probably 85%.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling everybody was kind of go their separate ways. My guys would go back to the break room. The volunteers would all stay out in the tent. No, I mean, they all came together. And what was so awesome was Andrew and Tom. So Tom Irvin, my lake superintendent, Andrew Crawford, the ocean superintendent.
Yeah.
What we did was I gave them kind of my whole thought about, hey, let's make sure to intermingle all the volunteers together. Let's not just put the women together and the men together, our crew together. Let's get them all together as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And in doing so, those guys took that and they did it. So we had, let's say, a cup cutter had a woman go out with them. We had a greens mower go out, and we mowed all the greens ourselves. We didn't, our crew did. We didn't have volunteers do that. But the turning boards, we had 1 or 2 women do the turning boards. Bunker rakes were intermingled, and things like divots at night, and they all were like taking selfies and hugging and having just an amazing time the whole day, eating lunch together. And it was the energy that they brought. And I will tell you, Joel, they were the best volunteer workers I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It wasn't just for show. They didn't just come out here. Again, giving credit to Tom and Andrew, they were giving them hoses, 100-foot long 1-inch hoses. and backpack blowers. We didn't blow with like buffalo blowers, the fairways. It was all backpack blow. Yeah, I mean, we had the smallest woman on the crew, and again, we didn't know hardly any of them, so we were doing job assignments just in the dark, and she was amazing. She had a backpack blower every morning, walking up and down the fairways. Now she was the most fit of everybody. She went for a run every day. I wanted to call it a jog, but went for a run every day during the day. But she was fantastic, Caitlin. And so just not just the energy, but one of the women explained. She goes, "It's hard enough for us, first of all, to get the job.
Yeah.
But once we get it, we know we have to work harder than everybody else, than maybe a man that gets the same job." And what one of the women said was, "And we don't mind that. That's okay. We just want to get in there because we know we're going to come in and outwork the guys."
And they do.
And they did. And I'll tell you, they were so excited. They worked their butt off. And a big part of it was they wanted the course to be amazing. The best women golfers in the world. And that's what was so cool. And that's what I didn't understand when I did this. And I started to find out the week before. Sally Jones and Alex Hills came out on Thursday. I think it was Thursday before. And they came out, and I gave them a tour of the new maintenance building and walked around the course a little bit with them. And I started to understand at that point what this meant to them. I didn't, that was the part I didn't get. To be able to pull this many women together. And I too, and you mentioned it earlier, I was hoping this wouldn't be a overshadow all the work, my team did, and everybody did for this championship. But once I started to meet them and understand and watch them work,
and their passion and their work ethic,
180 degrees. I wanted this to be not about them, but I wanted the spotlight to be on them, and to really work this hard, because I understood how great they are. I mean, I always known, but I hadn't worked with women in the industry in, gosh, Joel, 20 some years. So it was pretty powerful.
Do you think this will be a tradition now for the U.S. Women's Open? You think the next 2-3 years they'll follow your lead on this?
I hope so, of course. I think it would be great. I know Pebble Beach 2 years from now in 2023. Bubba seems like he's all in. Good. On this, and then after that, it's at Lancaster.
Yeah, coming out here. Josh Saunders.
Exactly. Yep. So
I have seen I'll push him a little bit. I know Josh quite well. I'll encourage him, but I'll tell you, the press that you guys got as a whole was really wonderful, and it was really well done. And like we said, it's not just because they're women; it's because they're good. And I think that came through well. And like I said in the conversations that I had, what they've come out with is that, not knowing what to expect going in, but the camaraderie, and they're all texting each other. They're all talking to each other still. And I think there's going to be an awful lot of friendships built from that experience. And hopefully they all pull together. I know a lot of them, do tournaments, and have traveled around the golf circuit volunteering, but this particular experience was so unique because of how well you guys pulled it off. And then in the seminar work and all the stuff that they were able to do in between the morning and evening shifts was they stand for. So again, I can't say enough. I mean, you guys had asked us to support the Open, and I didn't know you were even doing that when we said yes. I'm like, wow, if I'd known that, Troy, I might have given you more money. I don't know, but don't repeat that. But it was such a memorial to everything that you guys have done, and I'm so glad it came off as well. And the place looked great. I mean, I've talked to a number of our friends, superintendents that walked around, and they've called me and they've said things like, wow, the place is looking great. And, we should spend some time at another point and actually talking agronomy. But, my hat's off to you for that as well, because I've known your course for a long time. It's not an easy place to grow grass. And I know how much work you've done since you've been there. But to be able to pull off this level of history at the Women's Open is just, again, I commend you and your whole staff. And I guess now Andrew's moving on, I hear, and taking one of my favorite clubs up north, and so you're going to have to kind of start a little bit over from that side, right?
Yeah. Actually, it's Tom.
Oh, it's Tom. I'm sorry. Yeah, I knew that. I'm sorry, I misspoke there.
That's all right. Yeah. No, he his last day was right after the Women's Open.
Good for him.
So
yeah. Claremont
nice
a wonderful
to
property, and I think he'll do great there. And
Yeah.
I think he lives real close. Troy, I can't thank you enough for doing what you did. I can't. I commend everybody for what this was. I really hope that this starts a tradition, and that we can actually stop having the conversation about women in golf, just about how great this particular group of people are. And like I think you've said this very eloquently here, and that it was just a great experience for everybody, and it sounds like it was a great experience for you as well.
Yeah, it was. Thank you very much, Joel. And I want to be a champion for this, and I want to really keep this going, keep this alive. Because
I think maybe down the road this will be the Troy Flanagan,
Well,
legacy, which would be nice.
I don't want to be my thing. I want to be there.
I understand. You are way too humble, my friend. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Joel.
Let me introduce to everybody Lorabeth West. She is the Assistant Director of Agronomy at Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles, and she works for one of our dear friends, Matt Mullenbrook, who has been there through construction over the last number of years. Lorabeth talks about her experience and her time at this year's U.S. Women's Open. I am now speaking with Lorabeth West, who is out at Hillcrest Country Club with our friend Matt Mullenbrook, whose name I can't pronounce properly, Matt, but sorry about that. But Lorabeth, thank you so much for joining us. You are one of many women that got to join the Olympic Club last week, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, or a few weeks ago. I don't even remember anymore. But you were one of the privileged that got to spend some time on that really historic event at the Women's Open. But let me talk a little bit about you. I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time over the phone the other day, and I guess I talked to Matt, but I didn't realize that you were a Jersey girl. You grew out in my part of the world, which is kind of fun. So tell me how you got into this silly business of golf course management and all that.
Well, I was going to Rutgers, and I was working in a lab, and I realized I did not like to be inside at all, I guess, which when I was younger, I didn't want anything to do with raking leaves or any outside yard work. And I took a horticultural therapy class.
Everybody yelled at you for not raking leaves and doing all that stuff.
Yeah. And my dad told me that a string trimmer was dangerous. So, I got off the golf course, had to learn how to use that.
Sorry.
So I took a horticultural therapy class, and I thought that was very interesting about how everyone can kind of benefit from plants. And I wanted to see what I could do with that I could really make a career for myself. And I found plant science, and I kind of fell into the turf. And I joined Turf Club my junior year when I went in and started my classes. I was able to go to GIS and take part in that turf bowl. And that really, when I got there, it was like, wow, this is something else. This whole industry, like, really kind of brings it all.
And you hadn't worked in turf at all at that point, right?
No.
Just kind of fell in love with it.
I used to scoop ice cream and rent surfboards through the summer because I grew up in a beach town. So it was definitely a lot different. And I think my first week of classes, when I switched into it, and I took fine and sports turf with Richard Hurley, and I had a class with Dr. Bruce Clark. I really was just so intrigued by all of it. And when I was graduating my senior year, I wanted to do some more school, but I realized I needed money because I was already in pretty deep for my undergrad. And I sent out my resume, and I just wanted to see who was going to give me an opportunity that wasn't a 6-month internship and that was going to show me, because there's a lot of times where people don't want to take that on. And I wound up at the Los Angeles Country Club. They gave me my first opportunity and kind of showed me everything. And when I heard Hillcrest was doing a really big renovation, I knew I had to get in over here. And luckily, Matt let me come in. So
what was your degree in ultimately? What did you get a degree in?
So I have a plant science degree in horticultural and turf grass management.
With no turf experience, you got a job at LA Country Club.
Yeah.
That's really quite impressive. I have to say, that's really quite impressive.
Yeah.
So you just packed your bags from New Jersey. I assume you threw it all in the back of a car and you drove 3,000 miles to LA.
Oh, yeah. Well, I put it all in my car, and then I put my car on someone else's truck and they drove it.
Oh,
and my cat and I flew out together. So it was a tough thing to do at the time, because I committed to leaving in like November of my senior year, and towards the end of my senior year, I was like, I'm just going to move 3,000 miles to do something I've never done before. But I had a lot of support and a lot of people saying, if there was anyone that could do it, it's you. Yeah. And I kind of just took that, and I was like, well, my dad already paid all the bills. We're going to California.
Yes, we're going, Kitty.
So, and I can't see myself doing anything else, or I like Los Angeles a lot, so I guess eventually I might have to go somewhere else, but I really like it here. Yeah,
so you're now an LA girl, Jersey to LA. I like that.
Yeah, I watched a YouTube video on how to pump my gas, and I figured it out.
Most people won't understand that except for us Jerseyites. We're the one and only state left after Oregon changed. We don't have to pump our own gas. So, and I live in New Jersey, and I kind of like that, actually. It's kind of neat. But so you get out to LA. You've never worked on a golf course before, right?
Right.
How frightening was that?
I was definitely a little bit nervous, because especially when you walk in and the first golf course you're going to be at is, a top 100 multi-course facility, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of equipment, it's a lot of moving parts. But I think I was just like, I love all that. I love all the excitement around it. I love the equipment everywhere. I love that there was 80 people. I was like, this is going to be so fun. And when I got there, everyone was just very helpful. The apprentices that were there, everyone was just so helpful. And, a lot of them helped train me and get me where I was. I don't think if the people were not as nice and as helpful, I wouldn't have stayed.
What do you remember your first day? Do you remember the fear of that first day? What happened that day?
Yeah, I do remember my first day. I remember I had to learn how to use a hose, and I don't have much upper body strength coming out of college. Yeah. So it was tough. And then I still remember he said, don't put your face in front of the quick coupler when you turn it. And to this day, I still put my face over it every single time. And I'm like, better.
Yeah, and everybody does.
And I also remember too, one of the hardest things for me is I had never had a radio before. So they called and they were like, what's your 20? And I didn't want to ask, what does that mean? So some of it is getting used to it, but I also think then at that point, after you're the new person and you kind of learn certain things, if someone else comes in a very similar situation, you kind of be like, oh, if this happens, like, you can do this. This has happened to me. I try to really share my experiences with a lot of people, because I've been there and I've done that in a certain way. So, if we mess something up, it's okay. We just got to let each other know about it, or whatever it may be.
What did you come in as? You were just an AIT, or what were you?
Yep, AIT, and Russ Myers at the time kind of just said, you can, kind of like a 2-year thing before you really get your handle on it. And I kind of really did. And then when Chris Wilson came in, I really liked spraying a lot, and I was really into all of that. So Chris helped me to create a spray tech position for myself there. So it was taking on a lot more responsibility, but still kind of being able to stay at the same location.
Was the work harder than you thought it would be? I mean, did you have any expectations, having never worked on a course? I mean, what was it like? I mean, you must have been overwhelmed at first. I can only imagine.
I definitely did not have any expectations.
That might have been good.
Yeah, it was definitely good. And I know Russ had said that to me a couple of times, like, this will kind of be easy because you don't know if it could be something else. And I felt that a couple of times when other people started to come in, or they'd be like, why do we do it this way? And I'd be like, why not? So, you know,
So you learned.
no expectations. And I grew up with 7 brothers, and I'm from Jersey, so I'm very competitive. And if I'm not good at something, I'm going to make myself be good at it.
Yeah.
So I really embraced a lot of the challenge. I remember I could not even push a top dresser. My second day, I think I had to use a string trimmer, and
Those are
I thought my
dangerous,
arms were going to,
They're very
yeah,
dangerous.
I thought my arm was going to fall off. But I just like, I'm not a quitter, so I wasn't going to give up about it.
So you've built upper body strength, I assume.
Yeah.
In the gym, or
It
did
took
you
a
just do
little
it through
while, but I
working?
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many hours a week do you typically work, or did you work at LA Country Club? I mean, what was a typical week for you?
You definitely work a lot. A big part of that, I think, is just the location. You're in Los Angeles, and the way that you water greens, definitely a little bit different. So, might be working 60 to 80 hours a week when you're in the season. And I feel like the season is really with the clock. So April to November, it's game on. So definitely not as much, I think, now as I used to, but you got to put the time in when you're at a certain level. And as you kind of progress up, realize that you don't have to, burn the candle at both ends all the time.
Did you know grass varieties when you came out there? Were you comfortable enough with all that? I mean, you had some schooling, but did you really know?
I think my second week I had killed a bunch of stuff because I walked through the ryegrass and I didn't know it was ryegrass, and I just started spraying all of it. So
Good.
I learned in school, and you do a lot of stuff in school, but I feel like you learn so much of the science and all the other stuff that is not the same as field work. When you come out to the field, things are so much different. Everyone's going to show you how they have a certain way of doing it. Even as far as chemicals, like if you try to have a conversation about chemicals, every state you go to, they're a little bit different.
Oh yeah.
So I'm also a visual learner. So if I'm reading in a book about bent grass and then Bermuda grass, I'm not going to take away as much of it as I would if I'm out in the field on top of it. Like, okay, this is the difference.
Tell me the story you just told me about the POA, how much you hated it and loved getting rid of it.
The POA greens, they were really, really tough. And I felt like, for 6 months straight, all I did was have a hose in my hand and run around crazy. So when they went to go renovate the South Course, I got to take part in killing it with Roundup, and that was awesome. And then I got to side cut the putting green, and I couldn't move my hands for about 3 days, but I did not even mind because that putting green was
could be.
there.
Get rid of that POA. So when did you move over to Hillcrest?
So I started at Hillcrest in April of 2019 after I'd spent 5 years at LA.
You had told me the other day on the phone, you had, I guess you had made some connections when you were volunteering out at the Open in Shinnecock, and that kind of got Matt's attention. So tell me that story of how you made that all work. And I knew you were out at the Open.
Yeah, so I was put in a mowing group for the week with Jessica Lenahan and another local Hampton fellow, and Paul Vermeulen was in charge of our group. So at first in the week, I was moving boards, and I got to ride around with Paul Vermeulen a lot, spend some time talking to him, really enjoyed his company. And then later in the week, one of the team members, he didn't show up, so I kind of had to hop in on that mower, and I was kind of excited, and I wanted to get to mow those greens.
There you go.
So Jessica and I kind of worked together on that, and I think Paul just enjoyed being around us for the week. So when I was coming over to Hillcrest, Matt, he's like, I was heading down to Sawgrass for the week, and he said, "Are you gonna see a Sawgrass?" And I was like, Paul Vermeulen, and I guess they had known each other, so I made sure to mention to Paul I was talking to his friend Matt, and Paul's a really great guy too. I'm really thankful for the experience I've had with him, and he's definitely someone you can call for help or advice.
So you've had a lot of experience volunteering at some of these tournaments.
Yeah, I've been to the U.S. Open. I went to the U.S. Senior Open. I did a Wells Fargo Championship at Eagle Point. I did a LPGA event at Lake Merced. I worked at the Los Angeles Country Club when they hosted the Walker Cup. And then I did Sawgrass in 2019. So I only really missed 2020, I guess, kind of like everyone else.
Yeah, like everybody else, exactly. We all sat in a box. So let's talk about your experience just recently at the Women's Open. I mean, I've known Troy for a long time. I've known the Olympic Club for a long time, but I actually think what Troy was able to pull off was really quite historic. and important, because he brought in so many women to manage essentially the Women's Open, which makes perfect sense. But tell me about your experience there. I mean, like I said, I talked to Jessica, and she's shared a lot of stuff with me, but I'd love to hear your side of that same story.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really great to come in. I was already going in knowing a few people, which was really great. Obviously, I met Jessica at the U.S. Open, and then Lauren Lasoka, I worked with her at the Los Angeles Country Club, and she's over at Bel Air now, so still in the same area. And she was there, so we got to hang out a lot during the week, which is much more than we'd ever do here because we're both at the golf courses all day. One of the women that I mowed fairways with, Sally Jones, she actually went to college with Matt Mullenbrook. So,
there you go.
That was kind of cool too. Yeah. And then just kind of getting to meet people. And you know how small the industry is once you get in somewhere. And even, we were talking about the pure distinction. A lot of us have pure distinction grass on our greens now, and they have a weird segregation that starts to happen, these little mutant plants. So Lauren started talking about it. Kelly Lynch was there for Pure Seed, and we were like, hey, have you seen this? And Jessica Lenahan also, same thing. She was like, oh, we have that on one of our greens. So it was cool to kind of be like, oh, well, you guys, we have this problem. Here is someone from Pure Seed here. We can kind of take this and be like, hey, can you help us with this? What do you think? And it's also really cool to be in a room with women and they're having the same kind of conversations that you would just have at your home course. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, just kind of geeking out a little bit.
Yeah, what their height of cuts are, how they spray this, how they mow this or rake that, or, just they do it this way. It's just very funny. I'm sure for a lot of people to ever be in a room of 30 women just sitting there talking about
turf
machines and stuff. Yeah.
How cool is that?
Well, because normally you go to a tournament and you hear the men talking about and stuff, and sometimes when I go home, I know that a lot of the women in my family probably don't know what I'm talking about, but I know that my dad and my brothers know what red dye diesel means, things like that. So it's definitely cool to be able to have a conversation on a little bit different of a level, I guess, on that, what you're really into level.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the other things that went on at the Open. I know you guys were working your tails off. You're up at the crack of dawn and working till sunset, I assume, right?
Yep. And then we, in between, we did some professional development, and a lot of that was really, really cool because I think that for anyone in the industry, I think we kind of lack that in a sense. You go to school, and I got a degree on how to grow grass and all that other stuff, and I took intro to marketing, intro to management, but nobody taught me how to manage 35 people and their different personalities and what I'm supposed to do with my 401ks or my invoices or certain things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of things that I would realize more so in a setting of that, like a professional development setting, than when someone kind of comes after you and they're like, maybe you shouldn't do this. I feel like sometimes the self-realization is a little bit more. And one of them was talking about microaggressions, and I have a very sarcastic sense of humor, and a lot of times
we all are.
Yeah, it is not received well, and I understand that it's okay, this is, I might think it's funny, but someone else might not, or they don't understand, and there's a time and a place, and it's okay, I should, maybe say that in my head first and then not say what that is out loud.
If you figure that out, teach me that, would you please? Because I'm not good at it either. So
it's going to be a work in progress.
Yes, it has been for a long time. So these were some of the subjects that they were talking to you guys about in these training programs at the Open?
Yes, a lot of leadership, and then equity, and then you want to have diversity in different things too. So, one of the things the mental image that they talk about is how, if you describe a person, what picture are you painting in your head? Because we are out here kind of trying to change women on the golf course. I don't think it's weird if you see a female police officer or a female doctor, or I just never thought anything of that. And when I did get to the golf course, there was a lot of people that would say, what are you doing here? What do you mean? I didn't know it was strange. So, I felt it important at that time to kind of point out to everyone that we are a part of changing that mental image, because we are on the golf course every day and people see us, and there's the members, you have younger kids. When I got to LACC, Patty Reedy was the superintendent.
Your boss at the time.
So she had been there 8 to 10 years, I think, beforehand. I worked with Yorenza Setishikoli. Probably didn't say her last name right.
That's all right. I can't either.
So there was 3 of us, and to come into a big multi-course facility like that and to work with 2 other women, they had kind of already, I don't know, everyone's a lot more accepting of it and receiving of it a little bit. So when they left, I was still comfortable. Lauren Lasoka came in, we worked together, and then she went to Bel Air. Caitlin Tanner, she did an internship at Bel Air, and then now she's at Riviera. So Los Angeles as a whole right here in these clubs has been changing this mental image for a long time without any of us realizing. And I think that is like very important. So I hope that a lot of people around here kind of see that. And I know now that a lot of these members, we have team play, they're over at Bel Air, they play at Riv, they're at LACC, they're all around in the same area. Like I remember once our golf course opened, there were people that would see me and they'd be like, oh, she used to be at LACC. So
really? Okay.
It's kind of cool to move around the area and just be a part of changing all of it, kind of. And I actually have a female team member right now. Her name's Kayla. She was working with our caddy program and she wanted to come onto the golf course. And, this past week I said, do you want to spray? Like, you want to get on a sprayer? So I think she's really going to take a liking to it. And I'm kind of hoping that if she wants to stick with it, Hillcrest offers a scholarship program. I mean, she could go get a 2-year certificate or whatever she wants to do.
Did you teach her how to use a radio?
We're gonna start that next week. I'm gonna show her how to use a hose this afternoon.
Right.
So
that's pretty hard.
But she's a boss with a fly mower and a string trimmer, so she'll show anyone out here how to use it.
They're dangerous. Yeah, you got to be careful. Very, very strict. I assume you met a bunch of folks at the Open that you didn't know, and you've gotten to get to know since the experience up at the Olympic Club.
Yes. Cherie Scarborough, I spent a lot of time with her during the week. She was really so nice and so great. There was another girl, Noelle, that was out, and she's in Purchase, New York. It's really so great because now I feel also like when you go to those places, you can go see those people, go see their golf courses. There's a lot of people that come through LA all the time. So I see people all the time just because they're like, hey, I'm in LA. And I'm like, hey, come stop by, come see what we have going on here. And I think also just another big part of it too is if you kind of go somewhere and maybe you don't have that female support that you need or that mentor, there's definitely certain parts of your job that would be hard and you wouldn't know who to go talk to about it or something like that. So I think there was a couple of things brought up to me during the week from some of the girls who haven't been doing it as long. What should I do in this situation? So I think that there's a little bit of a lack of that. So I think when you kind of can put us all together where there's not just 1 or 2 of us at a tournament,
right?
You can kind of go around and you find, and there's a few people I didn't have before that I feel like if I got into a situation, I would feel comfortable calling them. And I would hope that some of the other girls too, after sharing some of my experiences and certain things, they would want to reach out to me. Knowing that the support is there and it's not so hard to find. It's kind of been presented to you.
Do you think these tournaments will change a little bit? They'll be a little bit more open and accepting of bringing in more women superintendents and assistants?
I hope so. I think it's just you have to go get them. You can't just, I feel like sometimes you go to tournaments, they have their list of people that they've kind of already are a shoe-in for their tournament. And then maybe they send the other ones out to their friends. So I think it's just kind of making sure too that it really is open to everyone.
Yeah. So you asked. I mean, so what advice would you give somebody coming up, a woman coming up in the industry, in particular about going to some of these tournaments? But what advice would you give to somebody that might be thinking about going down the road that you went down? And yours was pretty unique. I mean, you came into this blind. I mean, it's a fascinating story, Lorabeth. It really is.
I feel like you can't give up. And a lot of it is you get out of it what you put into it. And it's not an easy job for anyone.
No, it's not.
So I think that's also a self-realization that you have to have too. If you don't want to do it, don't make yourself do it. Don't be unhappy doing something that is so hard and so strenuous and takes a lot of hours and things like that. So you just have to want it, and you have to want to go for it. And I feel like you can't be afraid to say, I don't know, or how do I do this? You have to go for those resources.
What do you like about this? What would you tell somebody if, if you're sitting down and saying, do you really like your job? What are you going to tell them? Because I know you do.
Yeah, I love it. You get to do it I feel like I get to do everything.
Yeah.
I run the irrigation system, I run the sprayers, I come in here and I have all these sensors. I got to make sure that the payroll is kind of okay. And then I have all these other screens and I have to I can follow all the other equipment around in here. And then we have to make sure, that the team's 401ks, we got to go pick up the lunch. Like there's so much to the job that I feel like you don't have time to be bored. I don't feel like
Right.
I'm sitting in front of a screen or there's not too much monotony. And I think that a lot of it too is that something can blow up any second. And
Right.
I feel like
Always
that
a
is
change.
just like
Yeah.
kind of exciting,
Yeah. And you're outside in the
we have
fresh air.
HDPE pipe, so I don't think anything's really going to blow up on us. That's not
Let's hope not.
self-induced, but
Let's hope not, right?
yeah. But I like that, there's just that every day you're not really sure. You kind of got to be on your toes. Like it's hard to get complacent.
Yeah. So what's the next step for you?
Well,
you're gonna take Matt's job when you kick him out. I mean, you're gonna. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't say that.
My fiance, he is the superintendent over at the North Course at the Los Angeles Country Club. So he has the U.S. Open in 2023. So I'm sure we will be in the area until then. Right now, I am hoping to get through the scholarship program at Hillcrest and get my MBA.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
I would like to. Thank you. I would just like to just be in charge of something really big. I just really like the operations of all of it. I like being at we only have one golf course here, but it's a big operation and there's a lot to go with it. And there's a lot more than just what's going on outside. So I don't know if it'd be like managing a few golf courses or one golf course
But you're going to be.
I don't know. I just feel like I'm just going to keep going because I don't want to be bored.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe that, actually, because there's nothing boring about what we do as an industry, and certainly what you guys do. So you're going to be a superintendent family. That's pretty risky, that, right? But that's great.
Well, he said he would be a stay-at-home dad, so.
Oh, God, so perfect. So you're going to take over there, and then he can be home. That would be perfect.
I said maybe he can have the children too, and I'll just stay working.
Wouldn't that be nice? Why not? I mean, fair is fair, isn't it? Lorabeth, thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time. I hope maybe someday we can get you back on here and just talk to you about agronomy and see if Matt will share with you some of those tricks. But let's talk agronomy one of these days as well, and have some fun with that. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for doing what you're doing. It's been great having to meet you here on screen. But hopefully, maybe we can catch up down in San Diego at the National this year, since we have one.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It is a real pleasure for me to introduce you to Jessica Lenahan. She is the assistant superintendent at Hayden Lakes Country Club in Hayden Lakes, Idaho, or Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She is the assistant under our friend Jeremiah Farmer. And she is also the former assistant to our very own Kevin Hicks when Kevin was at the Coeur d'Alene Resort. Please enjoy. Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us here on the EarthWorks podcast. We are celebrating the recent U.S. Women's Open, and I know you were a big part of that. But before we get into some of that, tell us who you are. I know, I think you and I met for the first time at Shinnecock when you were volunteering for that. And of course, I've known of you, and I probably feel like I know you better than most because of Kevin Hicks, who was one of your previous employers. But give us a little rundown as to your background here in the turf industry.
So when I was in high school, I was, I believe 15. I needed a summer job, and my dad at the time actually was the director of outdoor operations at the Coeur d'Alene Resort. And he kind of told me, you're not going to work for me, but maybe give Kevin a call and he might, give you a job. So I called Kevin and I actually started working on the flowers. And so I did bunkers and helped take care of the geraniums for the first couple of years I worked there. And I actually was at the resort for 7 years before I ended up moving up to Hayden Lake Country Club, and I've been here. This is my 10th season now.
You've been at Hayden Lake for 10 seasons?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. It's a good spot. I really like where I'm at here. It's been a really good fit, and working for Jeremiah now has been awesome. He's I think he's on his 8th year here, and so
so you were there before Jeremiah was there?
Yeah, I worked for John Anderson for about a year and a half before Jeremiah came in.
And Jeremiah Farmer has been a dear friend of ours for a long time, and obviously Kevin and he go way back as well. I didn't realize that you started at 15 on the golf course. So did Kevin feel any obligation to have to bring you in because of your father's connection?
Probably. I mean, I'm sure that was like kind of a start. And because I was young, I didn't end up doing any mowing or anything for the first couple of years. So I got really good at shaping in a bunker.
There you go.
And then I was a couple of years before I started mowing, but doing bunkers and flowers for a long time.
So so you fell in love with the idea of golf? I mean, explain the whole process.
I'm not really a golfer at all. I mean, I golf when we have industry events, and I'm, kind of forced to, and I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I just, one of those things where when you're on the golf course all day, kind of the last thing I want to do is go back out on the golf course and play. And so I do play a little bit, but it was one of those where I'd been working at the resort for a long time, and I had kind of started up at the country club for a year, and it was like, well, I'm at the point where I kind of need to decide what I want to do with my life. And I really love working at the golf course. I don't think I want to give this up. So I should probably just go to school for it. And I ended up doing Penn State's online program, and I got my bachelor's degree through Penn State.
You went online and got your degree?
I did.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Kevin,
so that was good.
Kevin,
I was able to work.
Being the good Penn Stater and encourage you to look at Penn State?
Yeah, well, Kevin had gone too, and it was one of those where, if I'm going to go to school and you go with one of the programs that's, the best in the country. So I figured I might as well go that route.
He didn't encourage you to go to Rutgers, where I was teaching at the time?
I considered it, but I didn't want to, I wanted to be able to work while I was going to school.
Yeah,
and so that was my main motivation for doing that.
And Kevin and I are both Penn Staters, so I can see why he would push you to that. So you fell in love with the idea of working on the golf course, though, as a young kid, though, right?
Yeah. And well, yeah, it was one of those where you're in high school or whatever, and it never occurs to you like, hey, I'm going to, pick this career in like golf course maintenance. Like, it's not every little girl's dream.
Right.
And it was just one that I kind of fell into and realized how much I enjoyed it. And even now I can't imagine giving up the golf course, because I've been approached in different times for, sales spots and whatever. I'm like, I'm not ready to give up the golf course. Maybe someday, but not yet.
Yeah. What's your aspirations? What do you see you doing in another 5 years, 10 years?
I don't know. I really like where I'm at. I'm in a spot right now where in the Northwest, superintendent positions don't come available very often. I mean, people get into these jobs here and they're there for a while. And so it's kind of a waiting game. Plus where I'm at, we're kind of spoiled with a nice budget and the ability to kind of do what we want at a private club. And so I'm a little spoiled, and so it's hard to when super spots do become available that are not up to par where I'm used to. It's like, well, I don't really want to backtrack just for the title. Yeah. And so I don't really have any desire to leave at this point. But if the right thing comes available, then the right thing comes available. But I don't really see that happening just where I'm at. I'm pretty set on living in Coeur d'Alene, so.
You pretty set in the position that you're in? I mean, would you be willing to do that for an extended period of time?
Yeah. I really like working with Jeremiah and our other assistant, Scott Cowan. He's been here for, I want to say 11, 12 years now. And we've got a really well-balanced management team. We all have our areas of specialties and we all get along really well. And so it works well for us. And so it's hard to want to leave that.
So what's your area specialty on the golf course? What do you like doing? And
I'm the one that gets to chase everybody down and make sure they do what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh, you're the boss lady then. That's good. Yeah. So you get to scream and yell at everybody.
Well, you know Jeremiah, he's so nice and he's so passive, and it's like he's not going to be the one to chase everyone down. So someone's got to do it.
But he's smart enough to see that in you and say, hey, Jess, you're going to be the one that gets to beat up the crew and get them going. So do you get everybody going in the morning? Is that part of your job description?
Yeah, we kind of trade off who does meetings. It just kind of depends on who's awake in the morning.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, he just moved to a house just about 20 minutes north of town. So he's been coming in late a little bit more often. And so we kind of alternate on who gets the day started.
Well, hopefully the boss above him isn't listening to this, but that's all right. It's good. So let's talk a little bit about what went on a couple of weeks ago. You had the opportunity to be one of 29 women at the U.S. Women's Open, and I can only imagine. And the reason why we're talking to you today is because of that experience and what Troy Flanagan was able to do with the Olympic Club, and it was really historic. I mean, the fact that he was so committed to want to bring in a whole bunch of women that are on Greens crews all across the country. And I mean, that must have been quite an experience. I know you've gotten a lot of experience doing other tournaments, and we can talk about that. But let's talk a little bit about the experience that you had that week. I assume you were there that whole week.
Mm-hmm. So previously I've kind of felt like the whole women in golf thing kind of annoys me, because I'm like, why do we have to make it a big deal about like women in golf? Because it's whatever, we just do our jobs. Like, I just want to come and do my job, and I just happen to be a woman in the industry. Well, I didn't realize until going to the Olympic Club how impactful it was having kind of the same experiences with all these other women, and just what a relaxed atmosphere it was. And it was a volunteer experience like no other. Like, I can't even describe it to you. And there were so many people there that were like, you guys didn't know each other beforehand, because I think I knew two of the girls were going into it, but it's like we immediately were friends. And so it was a really crazy experience. And it's not the same when you're dealing with men in the industry. Like, I can't really describe it, but it was a really, really great week. And the fact that Troy had the foresight to put that together was just absolutely incredible. I'm just so impressed with him and what he managed to do. But yeah, it was great.
And much of this was Troy's vision, is to make this crew as strong as it was, with women leading the way, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And his staff absolutely embraced it. I mean, he's had staff that have been there for 30 plus years, and they loved it. They loved having us there. And half the week they were wanting to help us like wind up hoses. Yeah. And be gentlemen. And of course they were impressed, like, oh yeah, you guys can do this. It's like, yeah, like we all do this.
So they didn't leave deflated because you guys were running circles around them, and you were teaching them a whole bunch of stuff.
They were glad that we could hang. Like, I don't think when we first came in at the beginning of the week, like I think they had pretty low expectations. And so they were impressed.
Really? That's unbelievable, because there's
I would have to think that. And so they thought, okay, a bunch of girls are going to come in, like, we're going to have to take care of them. And we held our own, that's for sure.
Oh, I've heard that you ran circles around most of them, is what I've been hearing. And it's been pretty. So what were some of the things that they did special for, and again, you've been at a couple other events, but my understanding was that there was a lot of seminars or meetings with people just on networking and the whole 9 yards on women in golf. And
so Kimberly Gard from Syngenta kind of organized everything with Troy, and so she kind of put together educations throughout the week. And so we kind of did a couple hours of education after our morning setup, pre-nap, post watch golf, kind of mix it all in. But it was different stuff about like women leaders in the workplace, and just diversity training, just really interesting stuff that we don't typically get during a volunteer experience. I will say it was a lot, and by the end of the week we were all exhausted, but it was very, very unique, and it was you don't get that ever, and so it was awesome.
What was the time scale? What was your day like? I mean, you had to be up at the crack of dawn and probably worked until almost the crack of dawn again, right?
Yeah, we got up at our shuttle left the hotel at 3:45, and so then we were at the course by 4. Usually start work at 4:30 and then finish around 8, 9, and then have a break until usually 3, have dinner, and then work again until 8, 9 at night.
So that section in the middle of the day, was that when they were doing these meetings and these seminars?
Yeah, after we would do breakfast, we'd do a couple hours of education and then try to sneak a nap in there. Troy found these awesome like those anti-gravity loungers, and so we had a bunch of those around, so those were like the prime nap spot.
Had you been to the Olympic Club before?
I had not. No, it was such a unique property. It was very interesting. The grass there is just unbelievable. I can't, like, the POA starts wilting at like 60 degrees with a little bit of sun. Like, it was just mind boggling.
Had you ever been in an environment like that where it's, it's ridiculously cool and foggy in the morning and, just doesn't really change much?
No, I've been to San Francisco before, but not during June. And just the little pocket that it was right there. I mean, should at the hotel, it would be sunny by the end of the day, and we go back over to the Olympic Club and it's still been socked in with fog all day. Right. And we were laughing, one of the superintendents, he had taken his polo or his jacket off at one point, and his hands were like slightly tanner. I'm like, okay, is this what it's like working here, where you don't get like a normal golf tan?
And if you move 20 minutes south or west from the Olympic Club, it changes temperature by 35, 40 degrees.
Right. Yeah, that's what all the local superintendents had said. There was a few that were there volunteering, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I live a half an hour south, and it's 80 degrees and just beautiful right now."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, okay. Well, I could never do this.
That little pocket right there. Talk about what the jobs were that you had. What did you actually do that week?
So I was mowing the step cut right around the greens.
Oh, wow.
They did with the 21-inch with the rotary mower. Their rough there was 3¼ inch, I believe.
Yeah, wow. It's an open.
And so the USGA was requiring just the step cut right around the green area, which they don't typically have. And so I was mowing that all week. And then the afternoons it kind of changed around a lot, either filling divots or hand watering or, what else did I do? Oh, we were trimming sprinkler heads at one point.
Oh, okay.
We just kind of jumped around, just different stuff.
So you were working. I mean, you were being a superintendent on the property.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Talk about some of the folks that you met and some of the camaraderie that you experienced with that crew of folks at the Open. I mean, you must have met some people you'd never met before, certainly from all parts of the country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite part was, as far as like the women in turf goes, was meeting more women that actually work on the golf course. I feel like a lot of the industry events you go to and you do the women in turf, and it ends up being, a lot of academia or sales. And so actually getting to hang out with people that are, assistants and superintendents and AITs and interns was awesome, because it's all the people that actually do the same job. Yeah. And that was actually the best part. I mean, there was the superintendents there's one lady that's the only female superintendent in the entire state of Arkansas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there was the only female equipment manager in all GCSA. Oh, and wow. So it was just really interesting to talk to these people and just hear, what kind of experiences they've had kind of building their careers and going through the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, staying on this theme of women in golf, for what it's worth. And I completely respect and agree with when you talk about, why are we even talking about this? Because you guys work as hard as anybody, if not even harder. But what kind of advice would you give a woman that wants to get into this industry? And I've said this to a number of folks, and we interviewed a number of people about labor supply. I just think this is such an incredibly untapped supply of labor. And the women that I've had a chance to meet, like you and a lot of other folks, they just love doing what they do. And I'm assuming you probably felt that camaraderie and that kind of passion for the job when you were over there. What kind of advice would you give somebody coming up? especially a woman that wants to get into this industry moving forward here?
I would say you just kind of have to try it out. I mean, in hearing everyone's stories, most people never expected this for themselves,
Really?
and just kind of fell in love with it as they did the job. And so it's one of those where it may sound crazy, but if you try it, you'll never know. Because like I said, I never would have thought I would be doing this.
Yeah.
And so you just got to go for it. I mean, there were a couple ladies that they actually started as like ski lifties, and that's how they work on the golf course in the summertime, and now they're superintendents. And so they just kind of work their way up, and it's just like there's unconventional ways to get into it, but you don't know until you try.
Is the turf schools important? Did it help you?
Yes and no. I mean, I have my piece of paper that says I know what I'm doing, but you know how it is. A lot of this job is just experience, and it's trial and error and just figuring it out as you go.
How many other tournaments? I know you and I met at Shinnecock at the Open a couple of years ago. I assume you've done more volunteering than just that particular event, right?
Yeah, I did the players in 2016, and I've done the waste management.
Oh, have you? Just because it's fun?
That's like a one and done for me. It was
Let's
like
hope so.
It was a fun experience.
I bet.
Because that tournament is so unique, but I had a really hard time with the fact that everyone that's there like does not respect a golf course, and like clearly is not there to watch golf. And so
it's a tailgate on a golf course property.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so and it's really hard to get any work done when there's 200,000 people on the golf course.
Well, you literally
So that was a unique tournament. Like I said, I'd probably never do that one again, just because it was a lot. And then I did the U.S. Open in 2018, and then Women's Open this year in 2021.
You're gonna do more?
I hope so. Yeah, that's actually the really nice part about working for Jeremiah, is that he supports the fact that I can get out and volunteer, even though it might not be the best timing for us. He knows how important networking and volunteering and helping out in the industry is. So
talk about the networking to me. I mean, I assume that you have had an opportunity to really meet a lot of people as you do those kind of tournaments, and I'm sure you met a lot of people at the Women's Open as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at Shinnecock especially, I mean, LB will speak to this as well, but our I call him our babysitter, but he was our flagger for our lines, because we couldn't see a damn thing mowing greens, was Paul Vermeulen, and he's the assistant director of agronomy for the entire PGA Tour. And so you just being at the opportunity to meet people that are in really high places that you just never know at what point down your career is going to come in handy. I mean, he helped LB get her job currently at Hillcrest. And so it's just like you just never know. And I mean, we just spent a week laughing and hanging out at Shinnecock, and that's a friendship that you just can't replace. So
I spent a lot of years at Rutgers teaching soils classes, and everybody seemed to get upset about the fact that it's all about who you know, and as opposed to what you can do. And the reality is, getting to know people in the industry is incredibly valuable, regardless of who you are. And having those opportunities to get out there and network is really critical. And you guys have done a great job with that. How was the experience at Shinnecock compared to the experience at the Women's Open?
They were both excellent in their own ways. I mean, each superintendent runs things a little bit differently, and so each was very unique. But they just unique properties, I think, was the biggest difference. But very, very, very fun. Both really irreplaceable experiences that I wouldn't replace for anything.
So you plan on staying there with Jeremiah for a long time, I hear.
Yeah, Jeremiah's not going anywhere, and so he's a great boss to work for. So I don't see myself leaving anytime soon, but you never know.
Yeah, but sales is not going to be part of your future, do you think? Is that what I heard earlier?
Maybe. It's just, I know it's one of those where it's like, you can make more money, but I can't imagine giving up the golf course, like those 5:30 sunrises and just that peace and quiet and not having to deal with people and be on the road and all that is just, it's hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody says in our industry, but that's what it's all about. So any other last thoughts on your experience at the Open? I mean, it sounds like it was really exceptional, and I've talked to a lot of people already about it, but any great stories that you have, or any other last thoughts that you have before we wrap this up?
Just to thank Kimberly and Joe from Syngenta. They were awesome, and they really took care of us. And we made sure to have truck beers at Joe's truck in the parking lot every night. And so we got to thank Joe for taking care of us all week.
Did they let you have those hot dog burgers or whatever the heck it is that Olympic
oh
is
yeah,
so
the burger
famous
dogs.
for? The burger
Better
dogs.
than expected. I had very low expectations because I mean, shit, it's a hamburger shaped like a hot dog. Like, how good can this be? And it was actually pretty delicious.
It's world renowned. I mean, it's like the first thing you do when you get there is you try to see if you can sneak out there and go.
And the line was huge too. I mean, there was hardly anybody there because they only sold, I think, 3,000 tickets or something a day. But the burger dog line was huge every day.
I'm sure it was. Jessica, thank you so much for spending some time with us. At some point, I'd love to have you back and just really talk turf with us sometime. And because I know your experience with Kevin and now with Jeremiah, you guys are doing some pretty amazing agronomy. Unfortunately, we didn't have really time to get into agronomy here, but I'd love to have that chance, especially coming from an assistant's perspective and, kind of talking about how the soil all works. But at some point, if you would be so kind, I'd love to have you back and on a proper EarthWorks podcast and really pick your brain a little bit more. So go back and study the soil tests and let Jeremiah, turn it all off to you. Look at your water and we'll catch back up with you. But thank you so much for joining us and thanks for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.